How's it going, everybody? Welcome to week 4. Kind of still going around, kind of filling in some civilizations. We've got two main ones: Mesopotamia, Egypt. Now we're going to go into Asia, looking some how early civilizations emerged there. As the lectures kind of talk about, the Indus has a lot of the features of all these civilizations we've learned about. It had cities, it had river, it had some form of government, some form of religion, a writing system, but it also gives us it's an example of one that we don't really know much about as well. So in the context of it does a writing system, but we haven't deciphered what it says, so we don't really know as much about that as Mesopotamia and Egypt. But we do know a civilization was there, the Indus was there, and then as the Indus declined, these new groups, the first nomadic groups we've encountered, these Indo-Aryans, who are part of this larger group of people called the Indo-Europeans, who spoke a similar language. So hopefully you have an idea of that. What do we mean by that? That there's cognates, there's words that are similar in Hindi, which is spoken in India, that are similar to the words of English, and that's all because they're related via these language patterns. And I gave some cognates there. There's a great little language family tree there in the lectures. Take a look at that. I did add, if you like etymology, if you want to know where, if you like language and you want to know where the history of words, where they came from, I gave a link to the etymology online dictionary, so you can look at some of that stuff. Kind of what's interesting there is if you look at the word of history, the root of history is this Proto-Indo-European vid. It makes sense, they explain it, but that ved is the same root for the idea of vid or Vedas in Sanskrit. So you can see how they're related. We talked about the Vedas. I gave an example of the readings of different Vedas there. And then a shift to the Ganges during the Vedic world, we sort of talked about. So I think hopefully you got there. Maybe I mentioned this, but this with civilizations that don't have all of the information there, historians infer, right? Use inference to, take what we do know and apply it to context that we don't know. So we infer that the Indus had some form of government. So statues that we find that look regal, right, most likely were rulers, right, or elements that look religious. We can say, okay, these are elements of religion that we don't fully understand, and we can kind of plug them into those concepts. So we did that, and then talked about China, the two rivers there, the Yellow and the Yangtze, different empires, these sort of Jia, the mythical empire, and then the Shang and Zhou dynasties as well. I gave a reading in a video on I Ching, this idea of prophecy. This part goes all the way, traces back to the Shang dynasty and these oracle bones. So the Shang also had elements of writing, so we know a lot about them. I Ching is a book, if you will, but more of a manual for prophecy, that if you want to, am I going to do well in this test? Am I going to be successful in this business, right? Am I going to become king or the ruler or the emperor? You could then consult the I Ching and you make these lexicograms. The video explains it a little more. Part of this comes out this literature of this Zhou period. And then Japan, a little bit different. That a lot of people came in, and then when the water went back up, sea levels rose again. They were sort of stuck there on this island. The one thing Japan doesn't really have is these big, huge rivers. They have a lot of like low-lying plains and mountainous. And the people that existed there, things from the outside had to come in. So things like agriculture, that'll come a little bit later. So sort of this Neolithic period of the Jomon, they did produce pottery and there, and then so that's sort of the Jomon period. The Ainu is another group of people that existed within sort of what is now the Japanese archipelago. And then Korea as well, sort of the northern Korea, very connected with a little more not as mountainous, a little more flat, sort of connected with China, and then South Korea as well, or south of their sort of mountains, South Korea. So we talked about all of those. And then the last thing is, so the assignment for this week is to pick a piece of an artifact. So hopefully in all the lectures I've been talking about, here's the thing, here's the evidence we have for these civilizations. What are these artifacts? So pick one. pick one from one of these civilizations we've encountered in the last 4 weeks. Next week we're going to do the Americas and Oceania. So if there is something you want to do from there, it's fine. Just make sure it's dated before 0 CE. So kind of that area. So take a look at that. And again, in your artifact write-up, please you go over the guidelines before you submit it. But the first part, explain what your artifact is. Kind of 150 words, summarize it. And the second part, what does your artifact tell us about the culture from which it was produced, right? So sort of that's your own words. What have you learned about in the class? How can you apply that? So taking this, kind of putting your knowledge into motion there, applying it. What is this artifact? What do we learn about Mesopotamia or Egypt or Asia or Oceania, the Americas, and how does this artifact tell us about that? So kind of be sort of archaeologists, historians, talk about that. Third point is, please, if you can, please use a museum. That's for a reason. I mean, museum are great. A lot of them have these really nice digital collections. The only thing is each museum is organized a little uniquely. So, so just get in the habit or get an experience, not in the habit, but, have an experience of encountering and utilizing these museum websites. I did the museum, the Egyptian museum, just opened up in November, so there's a whole bunch of online archives for Egypt as well. So I think that's it. Great. I do look at the student announcements. There's a Lunar New Year celebration coming up on Manono campus, Tuesday the 17th. Also, if you're interested in going to Japan, there's a study abroad in Japan as well, and then some other announcements that I put up there. So I think that's it. Have a good rest of your week.